So for many years I've wanted to record Aunty Lauraine telling her stories. She was a flight attendant or stewardess. I can't remember the words they used those days. But she's got many stories to talk about flying around the world and experiences she had. And sometimes we forget to capture them. So I managed to capture my incredible Aunty Lauraine. Here she is.
I'd have to show you on a map so you would appreciate the distance. It was the longest distance any airline had. Oh, I see this is being recorded.
Yeah.
Longest distance that any airline had flown here on Earth. Yeah.
Where do you fly from, Aunty Lauraine?
From Johannesburg across to Maputo. We didn't land there. Went out to sea again, across Madagascar, and from Madagascar to Mauritius.
And that was your first stop?
That was 6.5 hours.
6.5 hours.
So the first stop, Mauritius.
Yes. And then a lot of folk disembarked. Those that remained on board were going through to Australia. And then
How long did you stay in Mauritius?
refueling.
Just refuel.
Yes, like an hour and a bit. About an hour and a bit, yeah. And then 9.5 hours over the Indian Ocean. There was a lot of Indian Ocean.
Wow.
Not directly eastward to Australia, to the west coast, to Perth. No, we went in a northeasterly direction to tiny little islands called Cocos Islands. And there was the runway just long enough to take us to land. And the Qantas crew used to be on duty there. And we would arrive there the next morning, going against the sun, you see, going eastward, and the sun's coming this way. So the next morning we'd arrive there, and we'd all disembark, and the Qantas crew gave the crew their breakfast, because we would have already served breakfast to the passengers. So we had a chance to stretch our legs, and they said to me, "Wouldn't I like a shower?" I said, "Oh, I'd love a shower." By this time we've been going for a good many hours, you can well appreciate it. I used to get up at 4:15 in the morning, but that flight for Australia used to take off quite early, like 8 o'clock in the morning. Having had breakfast at Cocos Island, had a jolly good look round. But oh yes, about the shower. Oh yes, I'd love a shower. I went to have a shower. It was all salt water.
Oh, really?
I didn't enjoy it at all.
Wow.
What was the water?
It was tropical.
Salt water.
Salt water.
Tropical. You'd understand what warmth and heat it was, high temperatures. And you boarded the plane. I was feeling my blouse was sticking to my back. Whether it was the salt water or it was the perspiration, I'm not sure. But then we all boarded again, and there were one or two Qantas crew that went back home with us. And then we followed through, we went through to Perth in a south-easterly direction. And that was another 6.5 hours.
Wow.
And you had to travel southeast from Cocos to get
Southeast to get to Perth, yes.
Yeah. Then,
And that was 24 hours.
how long did you stay in Cocos Islands? How long was that?
About an hour and a half.
Weren't you, and you were still serving people on the flights?
We served a breakfast before landing. They had their breakfast.
Yeah.
We, as crew, enjoyed bacon and eggs prepared by the Qantas staff on the island. They did everything, from being a baggage master to refueling, everything they did for our airline. And they were stationed there. I don't know what length of time they used to be stationed there, but this other two chaps came home with us to Perth. And when we got to Perth, I thought, oh, it's so much like Cape Town. You know, I just felt so similar in a way. But no Table Mountain or anything like that. But it was very nice being there. But this was already in the later afternoon
Yes.
by the time we got
So
there.
how many hours from Johannesburg to Perth were you working?
24 hours.
You were working 24 hours.
Well, counted 9.5,
Yeah.
6.5, and 6.5 at the end, that's 12, that's 13, plus 9.5, so 10, that's 23.5,
Wow.
24 hours.
So that doesn't happen anymore nowadays.
The other longer trip that there was after that SAA did, but we were only on DC-7Bs, not jets.
You were DC-7s
Yeah.
with the propellers.
Douglas, yes.
Yeah. With the propellers.
Yeah.
How many engines?
And then afterwards, they had the flight from the Far East, you know, that used to come through to Mauritius. Remember, we lost the
Heidelberg.
Heidelberg there.
Yes.
They just spoke about that on the TV the other day. Yeah.
Please
May I
tell me.
mention names?
Yes.
You sure?
Yeah.
Captain, I can't remember the other gentleman's name now. Can't remember.
That's okay.
They made a change. They found it too heavy going for captain to be in command, both in the forward journey and again on the return. At one time they only had 24 hours there, but when I started they changed it to 24 hours in Perth.
So
And what they had was Captain Keith Hayward took command of the aircraft between Johannesburg and Mauritius, and he disembarked. The other gentleman then took command from Mauritius right through Cocos to Perth. We had 24 hours there. He was in command when we returned to Mauritius. Then in Mauritius, Captain Keith Hayward boarded the plane, and he was in command of the plane on the way home.
did he just wait around in
But we
Mauritius for the plane to
didn't
come
go.
back?
We didn't get home immediately. That's the first international trip I did.
Wow.
And we were out of Mauritius 2.5 hours when we had problems. You know that story.
No, I forget it. Yeah, please tell me.
We had a problem on the port side with one of the motors, engines, and then not long afterwards on the starboard side, the engine nearest the fuselage was leaking out oil,
Wow.
and we were losing height, and we had to make a decision. We hadn't reached the point of no return, and we had to turn around and go back to Mauritius. And we came in at Mauritius. There was a baby on board, and I remember helping the mother, giving the baby a bottle, and we went round with sweets in those years to help people with the ears, that they wouldn't have a problem. And I was busy giving a baby the bottle, and the mother was just getting herself comfortable when the first officer came through, just to see what was happening in the cabin. They were concerned as to how people were taking this, returning to Mauritius, seeing that the one engine, I forget the name now, of stopping the engine, feathered it, I think I call it. And then on the right-hand side, the starboard side, where the fuel was leaking out on the wing. And they had to, because we were so heavily laden with fuel, they had to jettison it out, and you could see the fuel coming out from under the wing.
Wow.
Yeah. And we came in to land at Mauritius. It was very heavy, and we were losing height, we were losing fuel, and we came in 20 foot short of the runway.
10 minutes what rain?
20 foot short of the runway.
20 foot short.
But we were fine. It was on that sort of heavy
Yeah, yeah.
part. But you know, they'd still have the lines there.
It's the threshold.
So you just made it.
Yeah. And
You
we
just
stopped
made
right
it.
to the end. No one was hurt. No baggage was damaged. Just the tyres took the load.
And that was your first international trip.
Yes.
That was and then what happened then? Did you spend a few days in Mauritius?
We all disembarked. We got ourselves to a little hotel near the airport where everybody relaxed and had time to get over this incident, this experience. And of course, Hans Smuts was advised, and they had to get moving, and they sent another engine, and this was carried under the wing of a Skymaster. And I met the technician not at that time, but once I retired to where I was living in Paradise Beach, and he was at Aston, and he told me of this incident, having to fly to Mauritius, bringing in an engine for a DC-7B.
And you were the
And I looked at him and
You've got to
smiled.
be kidding me.
And I said, guess who was on that flight?
You've got to be kidding me.
And he said, you can't believe how fortunate you were.
You can't believe how fortunate you were that the plane made it.
Yes. Yeah. That we
Wow.
landed safely.
And how many years later was that?
Pardon?
So how many years later?
When
40,
I met this gentleman,
40, 50
he's
years?
now passed on. His wife lives in Aston with the eldest son. We lost this gentleman, I think it was last year.
How many years from the Mauritius story till when he told you?
Oh, that was about 1962.
So about 50 years later.
62, 63, somewhere around about there.
So 50 years later, he told you that story.
Yeah,
Wow.
nice. That same day.
The same day.
Yes.
So from you landing in Mauritius, that same day you flew out. I mean, that's incredible. Those days, how they did that.
Well, you
That
take
is
6.5
incredible.
hours flying time
Yeah.
for them to bring another aircraft. You see? So about midday, they must have left from Jan Smuts. I don't know what time exactly. But we were early morning when we landed.
Wow.
You see, like early breakfast time.
Sure. Wow. I still find it tough to know. Okay, firstly, so that pilot who got off at Mauritius.
Yes. He's
What
fantastic.
did he
person.
just stay in Mauritius while you all went to Perth?
Yes.
He stayed there on the
Yes.
beach.
24 hours. Little more than 24 hours.
So the pilots could take a rest, but the flight crew had to work all the time. You must have been.
What's more important? We're going to fly and get home.
That's, no, I think both are important, but I think that's very tough on you. Now, I don't know of any flight attendant working like that today.
It was the hardest. Because
Wow.
when the crew got back from the Australian flights, they always said, carry your bag, man.
Wow. When you only had 24 hours break in
Well,
Perth.
they said flying in those years, I don't know about now with the jets, I don't know. I was told this at some time anyway. 3 years in the air, 1 hour in the air was equal to 3 hours working on the ground.
Sure.
Can I put
Absolutely.
it that way?
Absolutely agree. I thought it would be more like 8 hours.
Yeah. But I was strong. I realized then I was stronger than the others. You know, I sort of measured myself against the other hostess.
Yes, this is good.
I measured myself, so to speak, with the others. Look, they had a very stressful time being up in the cabin. going through this experience, bringing us into land at Mauritius. I knew we'd get there. I didn't have a fear at all.
Wow.
I didn't.
And they all in a lot of fear.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying they had to pay attention to what they were about
Okay.
to bring us in.
Wow.
I'm only just thinking, as one would be in a situation like that, being upfront and responsive.
Sure.